Thanks for listening to Eat Your Content. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the podcast through my merch store on TeePublic. Get great quality items like t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more, all sporting the vibrant Eat Your Content logo. Go to teepublic.com/user/eatyourcontent for more great items, and thanks for your support.
What's this?
You made a list.
Non-negotiables.
Shirts perfectly pressed. Never repeat ingredients. Change menu every day.
Yikes.
Why are you doing this?
So they can see what we're capable of.
Who's they?
This is making me crazy.
Okay, I think that's going around.
Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast, your home for all things food and pop culture. I am your host, Rich Herrera. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder to follow on socials on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content. And some program reminders. We are finally recapping all 10 episodes of The Bear. We're doing them in chunks, so make sure you like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you'll know when those podcasts drop. And I want to introduce my guest host for the next 4 weeks as we cover The Bear, episodes 1 through 10. He is a fellow podcaster who has a list of non-negotiables. I'm sure that is long and distinguished. Mr. Scott Johnson, host of the What Was That Like podcast. Welcome to my podcast, Scott. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Rich. It's great to be here. I've listened to your other episodes about The Bear, and I'm excited to talk about it. I love the show.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I love the show, and I'm glad to have a fellow podcaster on to do this. And Scott, just a quick rundown, introduce yourself, kind of tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. Well, I have been podcasting since 2012, and the show that I produce and host currently is called What Was That Like? And each episode is a conversation with some regular person who has been through something extremely unusual. So like a plane crash, or they got attacked by a grizzly bear, or they were in a mass shooting, stuff like that. And
wow,
there's a lot of traumatic stuff in there. And these are firsthand stories. So it's not just a couple of people talking about some true crime case. It's the actual person who went through it. But we also have some happy ones too. I had a lady who was traveling, and she sent a text message to the wrong number, and they ended up getting married. So She told that whole story on my show. So we got a pretty good variety, but I've been doing that show for 6 years and having a lot of fun with it. And then I discovered The Bear, and I thought, wow, this is really good content too.
Yeah. So the Bear, I mean, you're obviously no stranger to stories about trauma. And I mean, if The Bear is anything, it's a story about trauma. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And the way we got together, we're both part of a Facebook group of podcasters, and I just put the clarion call out there to say, hey, I'm covering The Bear when it drops, and does anybody want to do it with me? And you're one of the first ones to answer that. And we talked and got together and found out you're one of the early adopters of podcasters. And man, just to have someone of your experience on my podcast, I'm thrilled and excited to have you on for the next 4 weeks. So
I was excited to see that post that you made in that group where we're both a member, and I thought, man, here's the opportunity to talk with someone else who is also a big fan of The Bear, because I have some friends who watch it too, but I also know some people who watched the first episode couldn't handle it. Too much anxiety,
Yeah.
But I just thrive. I love that kind of content.
Yeah, it's a great show. And yeah, if you're kind of prone to anxiety, The Bear is not the show for you, because it just does not let up once they hit the gas. My wife was the same way. She watched that very first episode of episode 1, and she's like, I'm out. I can't deal with it. This is going to be a you show, and you watch it on your own, but it is not going to be for me. So so I'm glad to have you on. So some housekeeping and some disclaimers. We're going to be recapping The Bear season 3 in chunks. So we're doing episodes 1 through 3 today. And then we're going to do 4, 5, and 6 in one episode, and then 7 and 8, and then episodes 9 and 10. So 4 podcast episodes in total that we're going to recap. We're committed. Me and Scott had agreed that we're committed to only watching the episodes that we're going to recap for the pod. So, for instance, for episodes 1 through 3 today, we only watched episodes 1 through 3. And let me tell you, that was really difficult. I mean, because all 10 episodes are just staring me in the face, wanting me to watch. Like, how difficult was it for you to not hit play on that fourth episode?
Oh man, I have some friends, and they are such good friends that they said, "Okay, we're going to watch this show on the same schedule that you're watching it," because otherwise they'll be dying to talk about future episodes. And that's what I think makes this interesting, because you and I've only seen 1 through 3 as
Right.
we record this right now. That's all we've seen. But yet
Yep.
a lot of the listeners have already seen all of the episodes, and they're probably going to be in their car yelling at their dashboard saying, "Oh man, you can't believe what's going to happen. You don't even know it yet."
I
So, but
know.
that's good. That's fun.
Yeah, it's just so difficult because, once the episodes dropped and I watched the first 3, avoiding spoilers online was like
Mm,
tiptoeing through a minefield. I mean, it was almost
yes.
impossible to not scroll through Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and there'd be a clip of an episode that I haven't seen yet watching. Like, oh yeah, I gotta scroll. And trying to avoid
Right.
that is really, really difficult.
It
And
really is. Yeah.
yeah, and talking about how Hulu decided to drop all these episodes, Netflix kind of popularized the whole season drop in one day, and some streaming services did that, some streaming services didn't. Hulu, for all 3 seasons of The Bear, decided to drop all the episodes all at once. And I was reading an interview with one of the producers somewhere where they said, "Why did you decide to do that for season 3?" And they said, "Well, we kind of want to be faithful to the first 2 seasons and do that." Now, as a consumer, as a watcher, I love that. I love that process of dropping them all at once. I can watch it over the weekend and be done with
Mhm.
it. But as a kind of content creator talking about this stuff, I hate that, because I feel like, especially when we watched episodes 1 through 3, I needed a week to kind of process what I just saw, right? So,
Yes.
what's your view on the whole season drop versus weekly release?
I like to have them all at once, kind of like you, so that I can watch at my own pace. Because I don't typically watch a whole season over a couple of days. I will usually watch one episode in the evening, because I really don't watch TV very much. At nighttime, I go to bed, I got my iPad, I'll watch an episode of something on Hulu or Netflix or something. And of course, when there's a new episode or new season of The Bear, that's my nightly show. But usually, uh, it's just one episode a night. But yeah, you're right. I've had to be very deliberate about avoiding spoilers, and not just on like scrolling Facebook or something, but even if you just go into Hulu, you can see the titles of all the
Yeah,
episodes,
yeah.
and there's a little summary right under that, and I've had to quickly avert my eyes in order to stay true to our agreement here.
I know it's been so difficult.
Mhm.
So we are committed. So we're a little late to the game because content is all about churning this stuff out as quickly as we can. But we're a little late to the game and recapping it, but we're going to do it well, and you're going to enjoy it, I hope. So we may not be first, but we're definitely going to be one of the best. And another couple of housekeeping things here for me, disclaimers for any regulars listening to the show. I recapped seasons 1 and 2, and I had chefs on. I had real chefs of fine dining restaurants that talked about, how realistic some of these scenes were, and talking about how they felt watching this show. And that was some great insights, some great perspectives on, man, they really nailed how these kitchens work in TV. So for this season, Scott, obviously you're not a professional chef. You're a fellow podcaster like me. So I'm taking this approach to season 3. The bona fides of the kitchen scenes and the cookery are legit. Those are not to be contested anymore. Everybody knows it's the real thing. So we're going to be
Mhm.
approaching our recap strictly from a pop cultural kind of artistic viewpoint, which is very different from what I normally do. Almost all of my guests, with the exception of maybe 2 of my 52 episodes, have all been chefs. So this is going to be a little bit more mainstream in terms of how the recap is done, but I'm really happy and excited to go over it with you, Scott, and kind of talking about it outside of the kitchen, so to speak, and just watching how these characters have grown or not grown or have gone through these situations. So really, really looking forward to it. And like I said, in 3 seasons, The Bear has just established itself as probably the one of the best views of the kitchen and how the kitchen is run and how chefs are in cinema, in TV. There's
Mhm. That's a non-negotiable right there.
Yeah, absolutely
It's
non-negotiable.
realistic. Yeah.
Very realistic. So looking forward to covering it with you from a different perspective there. So let's get right to it. So episode 1 is titled Tomorrow. It's directed by Chris Storer, and the story is by Chris Storer and Maddie Matheson. And man, I do want to talk, before we talk about that episode, the through line score, the music that was behind, that was playing throughout that entire episode was so great. And I was watching the credits. I was like, oh man, this was by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. These by Nine Inch Nails that did this. I mean, it was so moody, and it so fit the episode. And I think one thing that the Bear does really well in all 3 seasons so far are those needle drops of songs that they play throughout the episode. So just in general, episode 1, what were your thoughts on it? What did you think of it?
I really loved just the fact that I was watching a new episode of The Bear. Well,
Yeah.
that in itself is a great thing, but I just couldn't. How do they come up with an idea like that to have all of those? Well, the music, like you mentioned, it was poetic, I think, but it was also non-chronological. We saw so many flashbacks,
Yeah.
and they weren't necessarily in the right order. Chronologically, but man, what a work of art that episode was. It was just, I just loved it. And I just like to know what was the meeting like where they came up with the idea that we're just going to play this music all the way through and show these flashbacks, and yet it still came out so amazing and entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 36-minute previously on montage, essentially.
Yeah.
So when you watch TV shows like previously on, and it's like a quick 2 minutes. This was a 37-minute, and it was a Carmy origin story, essentially, and showing where he grew up in cooking and all the family trauma that happened while he was gone. And it was just so beautifully done. And such minimal dialogue, but you understood exactly the emotions that were going through, that everybody was going through. You understood, even as the timeline was chopped, I kind of understood where he was, because when they flashed back to the present, he was cooking some of these dishes that he was cooking in these flashbacks. And I mean, the guest stars that came on, heavy hitters in the restaurant world. I mean, 2 of them in particular. You had Daniel Boulud on there from Danielle NYC. The scenes were in his restaurant. He was saying in an interview that they were done all in one take, which is remarkable.
Wow.
And then you had Renee Redzepi from Noma, literally the greatest restaurant in the world. Has since closed now, but those are 2 huge heavy hitters. I mean, if you're not into the fine dining scene or a foodie, you probably didn't recognize who they were. But I really felt like this was fan service for us that are in kind of the foodie world and really keep tabs on high-end food dining. To see these two chefs come on this show is just telling you the kind of juice that the Bear has, that they can pull these chefs in here and they're okay with showing their food on this show, because again, as we talked about before, the bona fides are legit in terms of the kitchen scenes and the cooking. So guest stars, there was a lot of guest stars on this first season or first episode. Any pop out to your mind that
there
you
were
saw?
And they've been on they've had those on previous seasons as well. I wonder if they thought about, though, we can have these professional chefs on, but can they act?
Yeah.
They seemed like they were holding it up pretty well. I mean, they were just playing themselves, so maybe that's the easiest acting job to do. But I loved all of those. The flashbacks felt like things that we already knew had happened, but we hadn't actually seen them happen. Like in the fishes episode, car goes through the wall. Well, now we get to see the car being towed away, right? That was in this first episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. So, and we see Carmy and his, his progression, and then they're back at the next morning talking about, Carmy's apologizing to Sid for leaving her, because he was locked in the walk-in that whole time. So I don't know. It's a weird thing in my mind to see all these different things, but yet they all fit together. And can you imagine how confused someone would be if they hadn't seen the first 2 seasons to see this episode 1?
Yeah.
It'd be like, wow, what is all this stuff? But we knew what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just a really great way to catch up on the first 2 seasons, and to tie into what you were saying, they alluded to some things, or they showed some things that were alluded to in the first 2 seasons. So you talk, Carmi talking in an Al-Anon meeting, I think in season 2, where him and Mikey were talking about opening up a restaurant, and then they actually showed a scene of them talking about opening up a restaurant together, being the Bear. And then they alluded to his time in Copenhagen, and then showed him there. And so it was these really great kind of flashback foreshadowing kind of thing. And the returning guest stars again, Joel McHale did a great job as that really just awful chef that was cussing him out the whole time. Olivia Colman is back. Will Poulter, John Bernthal, they were all there. So some standout scenes for me was, again, it was kind of hard for me not to take off my foodie glasses and kind of watch this through the kitchen action. But when they were showing his time at Ever, which is Olivia Colman's restaurant, and Luca was talking about in Honeydew season 2 episode, I think 4 or 6, where Luca was talking about the chef that came in and just started immediately kicking butt. We see now that it was Carmen, Chef Terry's demand for quiet in the kitchen. That's actually a callback to Chef Curtis Duffy, who actually runs Ever. He demands quiet in the kitchen when he cooks. And because when I interviewed him for my podcast a few episodes ago, he said, I demand quiet in the kitchen, so much so that he put silicone out on top of his granite countertop so that when the plate hits the countertop, it doesn't make a sound. So it was really interesting seeing what real chefs do being acted out on screen. So Chef Terry is spooning some things out on the plate, and she says something. She says, "Keep the spoon." And they never write anything without intention on this show. What do you think that meant, keep the spoon?
I have no idea. I really don't. There's so many things that happen like that. They just kind of fly by so fast. And I've watched that episode of each of these first 3 twice now.
Yeah.
And no, what do you think of it? What do you think it was?
I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, man, because keep the spoon. Nothing's ever said without meaning. I feel like that's going to come back at some point in the future. Maybe not that specific spoon, but maybe maybe he does the same thing with Sydney later on when they're running the restaurant or something. To me, I think Chef Terry was doing that as like, I recognize your skill. Keep the spoon is almost like I'm knighting you as a chef or whatever. And, keep the spoon being, I recognize you, I see you. So I'm wondering if maybe that's what's going to happen with Chef and Sid's relationship throughout this season. But what were some standout scenes in this first episode that really made you go, wow, or really made you think?
When I saw Carmi making his list, his list of non-negotiables, I just couldn't help but think, how is this going to go over with everybody? And of course, now we know how well it went over with everybody. Not very well. But I think the scene that really stood out to me is when Richie discovers Mikey, the suicide, and and just the profound effect that had on not just him, but on Carm and on Sugar. And then almost immediately after that, we see Marcus lying on the bed where his mother used to lie. Yeah. And so it's a contrast of 2 completely different scenes, but dealing with death. And I don't know, I had to stop and really think about that, process that.
And now Carmi and Marcus have gone through this same trauma together in different circumstances, but can now identify with each other in that sense and brings them closer. One thing I like about the chef is that it feels, especially these first 3 episodes, they feel real claustrophobic. Like even when we talk about episode 2 here in a minute, it's all in one room. Like they don't leave the
Hmm.
kitchen. It's almost like a one act play.
Yes.
Watching episode 2, and it felt claustrophobic, and you felt the tension, and you felt the anxiety, and I think that's what the writers and Manny Matheson and the stores do so well, and the showrunners is they really harness that anxiety and not just display it on the screen, but really make you feel it, right?
Hmm.
So
Oh, absolutely.
I have chef
Yeah.
friends that watched the first 2 seasons and couldn't make it through the whole thing because it reminded them too much of them going through the kitchen in their younger days. And on the
Hmm.
family side of things, we may not be able to identify with that kitchen anxiety, but we can definitely identify with that family anxiety, especially with the fishes episode. I mean, how
Oh
many
man.
family I mean, how many family gatherings are just one compliment veiled as a insult away from just blowing up, right?
Hmm.
And
Oh
we
yeah.
we can all identify with that type of anxiety. So when we get into episode 2, it really we get into the non-negotiables, and then we kind of see the aftermath of of Richie and Carmi's shouting match through the fridge door, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
let's talk about episode 2. Episode 2 is entitled Next. It's directed by Chris Storr, and the story is also by Chris Storr and his sister Courtney Storr, which, if you didn't know, Courtney Storr is actually a real deal chef. She's one of the ones that helped Maddie Matheson make all the actors look all chefy. So, that's interesting there.
Hmm.
So we get through that first episode that's very kind of dreamy and previously on, and it's almost calming a little bit, even though it had its moments of anxiety, it was somewhat calming. And then we get into the second episode, and immediately it's everybody's just like F you, F you, F you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, we are back on the bear.
But first, I loved the opening scene with Sydney and
Yes.
her dad.
Mm.
Oh
Oh, I
man,
love that.
when she's getting ready for work, he desperately needs to get into the bathroom, and it's just such a real scene between a father and an adult daughter who love each other, even when there's conflict. You're living together, there's going to be conflict, but I just love the way they both portrayed that in that scene. It was it was a calm way to start that episode, and then, whew, then it goes into all the other stuff. And yeah, you're right. It's all one. It's like a one location shot or episode. And I'm wondering if they. I know previously they have done a continuous shot episode. I'm
Yep.
wondering if this one was done that way. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't. Yeah, the episode or season 1, episode 7, was
Uh
that
huh.
one take shot, or was that one take episode.
Yeah.
And that I actually subscribed to. I had the Hulu with ad subscription, and then I actually switched it to the Hulu without ads and went back and watched that season because
Mm-hmm.
I found out that it was a one take shot for that episode. I was like, oh my god, I got to go back and watch it again and have a whole
That's the
different
only way to
appreciation
see
for it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I actually have the ad-free Hulu now because of season 1, episode 7. So thanks, Bear, for upping my Hulu bill $4. But um, anyway, yeah. So I don't know if it was a one take, but it was certainly, it could have been a one take play. Just watching the way it transpired. So speaking of Sid and her dad at the beginning, I love when Sid was saying, "Hey, can you put my toothbrush back?" And the dad goes, "Yes, chef." And I'm like, he is
Yep.
all of us. He is all of us right now because the bear has made terms like "yes, chef," "behind," "corner," "herd,"
Hmm.
into the greater everyday vernacular. So I
It's
love that
mainstream. Yeah.
it's mainstream now. Like I even use it in
Hmm.
my house, and my wife said, "Stop it." So it's funny, and the dad saying that is just all of us and enjoying the show, and hearing people that aren't chefs say that stuff
Right. And
out in
then
the
of course,
wild
she
is
rolls her eyes when he says that, like, uh-huh, okay.
yeah. Yeah, all my chef friends are like, so when I talk to them, like, so you hear this out in the grocery store now, and somebody comes up behind you, they yell behind. They're like, yeah, and it's kind of annoying, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so yeah, we get into the opening credits, and something as simple as the opening credits I even want to talk about. It's just a great love letter to Chicago. I mean,
Yes.
showing all the people that work in Chicago, that these blue collar jobs that keep the city running, and
Hmm.
the song behind it. Just a great, just I love Chicago, just a great love letter to the city and the people that make it happen. I generally don't watch opening credits. I usually hit the skip intro thing, but
Hmm.
I actually watched this one. I enjoyed it. I liked the song behind it. I liked seeing all these people just being genuine, and these weren't actors. These are the real deal,
I kind of thought that was the case,
Yeah.
because it looked like real people doing their job. It's the city waking up, and that thing went 4.5 minutes. That's a
Yeah.
big chunk at the beginning of the episode, but it was great. I liked it too.
Yeah, second unit director went out and got some B footage of all the working folks of Chicago, and then they threw an opening
Hmm.
credits in there. And yeah, it was 4 minutes in like a 35-minute episode. So
Hmm.
just a great opening sequence. So watching this second episode, just hearing everybody kind of going back and forth, and let's talk about a little bit about these non-negotiables, because this is basically the non-negotiables
Hmm.
episode. I'm going to try to run through them as quickly as I can, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some. But there was a lot of non-negotiables on his list, and some of them I don't understand or it doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So his list of non-negotiables is of the place, less is more, vibrant collaboration, no repeat ingredients, consolidation and speed, confident and competent, in and out of service, pursuit of excellence, details matter, know your shit, and focus. And then he hands them over to Sugar to type up, and then she starts reading them out. And so there's some more non-negotiables. There's respect tradition, push
Hmm.
boundaries, shirts perfectly pressed, personal hygiene, break down all boxes before putting them in the dumpster, no surprises, never repeat ingredients, technique, change menu
Misspelled.
every day. Yeah, misspelled. Change menu every day. About teaspoons because Carmi is sick of running out of them. So looking at these, I mean, the one for me that obviously is completely crazy is changing the menu every day. I didn't do too much digging to see if fine dining restaurants do this. I know fine dining restaurants do change their menus pretty often, to
Hmm.
keep things fresh and to continue to get repeat business. But to change every day, that's got to be insane. Any of these non-negotiables kind of stood out to you?
I Some of them actually made sense, I thought. Um, it's stuff that he's learned. No repeat ingredients. That's fine. Pursuit
Yeah,
of excellence. Obviously, that makes sense. Focus and every second counts. That's a theme throughout all the seasons. And perfect means perfect. But the thing is, though, I think with these list of demands, he's it's almost like he's setting everyone up for failure, because
yeah,
who is going to be able to, and they're not goals. He was very clear about that, and they're not
right.
goals. These are non-negotiables. So I don't know. I didn't really like the idea. I mean, obviously he has high hopes, and obviously, I mean, even said we're going to get a star, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're ready for this list of. I mean, if they're looking to add more high anxiety, yeah, this will do it. But
Yeah.
for a functioning kitchen, it looks to be difficult.
Yeah, and let's talk about that star for a minute, because it was established, I think, in the second season that Sid wants a star. That's her.
Hmm.
She's a young chef coming up in the business, so she definitely wants that star. Carmi's been there, done that. He's retained a star, and tells Sid, look, if you get a star, this is a trap, because you can never back off once you get that star. It's
Right.
all about retaining it at that point. And then at some point along the way, he changes. He shifts his mind about that, and says we're going to get a star. And then these list of non-negotiables come out. So we don't see what made him change his mind, but I got to think that during the flashback episode 1, he went through this traumatic event with, I mean, season 1 and 2 was him dealing with Mikey's suicide and trying to take over the restaurant and that whole trauma. And then this season takes place, immediately after the events of him having his mental breakdown in the walk-in and
Hmm.
losing Claire, and he's going through another trauma. So I think watching these first two episodes, you're starting to see Carmi kind of regress, right? And going back to what he knows, which is cooking all this fine dining food and operating at this level of excellence and cookery that nobody is ready for. I mean, Sid is the only one on his staff that has any kind of, professional cooking experience. The rest are the ones that came up through the beef, right? You have Tina,
Right.
you got Richie, who's doing great in front of house. You got Marcus. He did go to Copenhagen and learn how to cook some high end desserts. But really,
Mhm.
that's it. He doesn't have a team of professional chefs, but he's asking them to put in the effort of those that have been in the business for as long as he has, and agreeing with you. He's setting them up for failure. And but it's almost like anxiety and trauma is all he knows. And when his life was starting to get together and get, at the season 2, he had his relationship with Claire. Things were looking up, and he talked about in an Al-Anon meeting, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because there's always another shoe. And it was
Mhm.
almost this self-fulfilling prophecy. So when he went into that walk-in and had nothing but his thoughts, his ruminating thoughts as he was stuck in the walk-in, and then just to have him lose it, and now he's going through this trauma again, and he's going back to this kind of where he was before, during that trauma era.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you think? Did you kind
It's
of see that too, or a little bit different?
it does seem like self-sabotage, you know, because everything was going well. And even though he was stuck in the walk-in, that night was kind of a success, you know. They pulled it off
Yeah,
between Sid and Richie handling everything. Um, I have a hard time figuring out what's going on in Carmi's mind. And maybe he doesn't know what's going on in his mind because we don't know what caused that shift. He was very much against the star, and now it seems like almost overnight that's his main goal. That's his whole focus is to get that star.
yeah.
And I don't know. It's kind of a mystery.
Yeah. What I think is ironic about this list of non-negotiables is that he immediately breaks them and doesn't even follow them himself. Like the part about vibrant collaboration, he doesn't collaborate with anybody. Like he
He's
changed
the
all the
opposite of that.
dishes. Yeah, he's the
Hmm.
opposite of that. You collaborate with me, I'm not going to collaborate with you.
Right.
He changed the front of house without talking to Richie. He changed tables around. He changed the entire
Hmm.
menu without talking to Sid. Even though, as he was talking about it with Sid kind of begrudgingly agreed that the menu changes that he made sense. But it's the fact that he didn't talk to her about it. He didn't talk to Richie about changing
Hmm.
anything. So already his non-negotiables is like almost do what I say, don't do what I do, right? So
Yeah.
he's not following that collaboration. He's not doing any of those things to um, get his team to work together. He's just taking the reins, and he's almost being that Chef Joel McHale character that he doesn't want to be. Like he didn't want to be that chef, but he's
Mm.
becoming that chef. At least through these first 2, 3 episodes, he's starting to become that guy. And of all the chefs that they showed in the flashbacks, Joel McHale's character, I don't even remember what his character's name was, but Joel McHale's character is the one that sticks with him the most. It's the one that he basically broke his will and then reshaped him into his image.
Hmm.
Which back in the day, a lot of that's not unheard of. A lot of chefs were like that. It was very much militaristic and just, I'm gonna break your will, I'm gonna break your spirits so that I can mold you to be like me, because if you want to cook at the level I'm at, you gotta be me. So what do you think
Mm.
about that, with Carmi kind of regressing and kind of becoming this probably not great guy that you want to work with?
Yeah, he's not. I don't like him as much right now. Not
Yeah,
right now, anyway. Because the funny thing is, he's talking about changing the menu. He's how long has he been in the kitchen already this morning? He's got all of
right.
these new dishes all out there, and so Sid walks in, and it's completely blindsided her. Like, okay, what is this? And I just love how she acts. Anyway, I just love her.
Yeah,
But at the same time, he's saying, yes, we're going to do all this. And it reminded me of when in the previous season, I think it was season 2, when they're talking about being equal partners, but then she walks in as they're doing the remodeling and sees that the wall's been knocked down, and like, okay, why didn't you tell me? Like,
yeah,
are we equal partners? And he kind of bristled at that, like, well, we're going to have to knock it down anyway. Why did I have to call you to tell you that? This is
right.
kind of the same thing. He's changing the whole menu, but at the same time, he's saying, oh, you've got a document that you're going to be a partner. Well, partners don't do that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
you talk about stuff, you know?
yeah. And it kind of sets her back too. Like she was a real angry with him for a minute, and then she said, "Hey,
Hmm.
I've got a DocuSign in your inbox. You're going to be a partner." And then she's kind of like, "Oh, because this is what she wants, right? Is to be this partner in this restaurant."
Hmm.
And just kind of seeing him, you kind of see him almost being I don't want to say two-faced, but flip-flopping. Like, so at this moment, him and Richie are yelling back and forth at each other, and just, oh my gosh, let's talk about them two for just a second. I mean, you want to talk about, you can tell they grew up like they were brothers, even though they weren't. I mean, you could, in the
Mhm.
midst of all of this vitriol that they're yelling back and forth at each other, it's almost out of love. Like they do love each other as
Mhm.
family, and they're fighting like that. So you only fight like that with family, right? Because you you know
Yes.
you really get into the dirt and the muck and the mire with your family, and
Mhm.
so you can tell as the f bombs were being thrown at each other that it was coming from, I don't want to say it's coming from a place of love, but it was out of love.
I think it
Um,
was, yeah. And Richie blew up even before he even knew about the list of non-negotiables. That
yeah,
was like just the icing on the cake, you know. It was funny in season one. Richie, I found to be not very likable. He was immature, insecure, always fighting, with Cuz because Carmi's coming in and taking things over, you know. But in this episode, it feels like we're kind of going back to the old fighting cousins, even
yeah,
though as everybody knows they're not really cousins. But I feel like Carmi's more at fault this time. You
yeah.
know,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Richie's had his evolution. He's wears suits now, and he's wearing a suit in this scene. He's trying to, really be the new Richie. But Carmi's just, I think he's the one that's mostly or more at fault anyway. Not completely, because I mean he did apologize,
Yeah.
but it's like that didn't mean anything to Richie, at least superficially. I know it did. We saw him in the car listening to that voicemail that Carmi left, and I think that Richie has a soft side. We know that, but
Yeah,
you
we've
don't really
seen it.
see it in this scene though.
No, no, no. And yeah, Richie in the first two seasons, he's kind of like that friend you want to have on your side, but you're kind of embarrassed to introduce him to your other friends.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
He's that kind of guy. And season 2, episode 7, Forks, is probably my favorite episode of TV of all time, where he does this complete face turn from old Richie to new Richie, and he realizes he's found
Yeah.
purpose, and he's trying to translate that purpose into the bear, and
Mm-hmm.
and him and Carmi fighting is kind of fighting against that. So we're going to see later on where he kind of is questioning that a little bit. But I think at the end of the episode, you do see that kind of softer Carmi again when Marcus comes in the middle of everybody kind of
Mm-hmm.
yelling at each other. Marcus comes in and everybody just goes dead silent. And we've all been there, right? We work at places where a family member has died and that person comes walking in, and everybody's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows what to say. Everybody's kind of quiet. And they're like, do I
Yeah,
say
you
anything
don't know
to
what to
him?
say. Yeah.
You don't know what to say. And everybody does that with Marcus. And Marcus is like, look, I just want to work. And he looks at those not listed non-negotiables, and he basically all he says to Carmi is, take us there, take us
Uh-huh.
there. So he doesn't feel that this is as unreasonable as everybody else, but he's also in the same place as Carmi now. And he just wants to focus on the work. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be an interesting relationship that develops through the rest of the season, because we saw in season 2, or no, season 1, where it was the one take restaurant with the tickets kind of flying out of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Marcus, got into it because everybody was
Oh
stressed out, and he
man.
threw that donut on the floor, and we didn't know if Marcus was going to come back, but obviously he came back. So, yeah, I
I
mean,
love Marcus.
yeah, Marcus is great. Marcus
Yeah.
is he also had a lot of growth over the first 2 seasons himself. And last year when I did the Bear recaps, me and my co-host gave him the most improved chef award.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing great. One of the scenes that I thought was kind of funny, and I want to talk about this for a little bit, is when the lights were flickering,
Mm-hmm.
and Fack is like, "Am I having a stroke?" And then everybody else kind of follows that same bit, like, "Am I having a
Right.
stroke?" thing.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about The Bear as a comedy, because it's classified as a comedy. It's 30 minutes like it's a comedy. It got nominated in the Emmys for all the comedy awards, and
Mm-hmm.
rightfully won all these awards. But it's very much not a funny show. I mean, they have jokes every so often, but it's not traditionally a comedy. And I think part of
Mm-hmm.
this is strategic on the on FX and the filmmakers is, let's put it in the comedy category for the Emmys, and we're gonna have a better chance of winning than going up against like Succession and those other
Right.
kind of. There's a lot of prestige TV nowadays.
Some strategy there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I gotta wonder if it's a little bit of strategy on there because it's very much not a funny show. I mean, what do you think about the Bear being classified as a half-hour comedy?
I loved in the first season, there was a scene, there's all that anxiety and stress in the kitchen, but there's a scene where Carm and Sydney are out back, just chatting, smoking a cigarette, and Carmy says something. I forget what the question was. He asked Sid a question, and her response was, "Wow, that was way too personal." And he kind of backs up like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And and then of course she's, "I'm just fucking with you." And
Yeah.
that just gave me a little bit of a glimpse. I love that scene because it gave me a little glimpse that there's going to be a little bit of humor in this show. And there was funny scenes. Remember when Sid was trying to get the veal stock off the top shelf?
Yeah.
And you knew what was going to happen,
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of the scene on The Office when Kevin brought in his chili, and he dumped the chili all over the floor. And the kids at the birthday party all out on the lawn.
Xanaxed out.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
Xanax, and Sid accidentally stabbing Richie in the butt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's dark, but it was funny,
Yeah.
because he got stabbed in the butt, so I can definitely see that there is some comedy in it. But yeah, if it were me just viewing the show, I wouldn't call it a comedy. I don't know what I would call it. I mean, it's a drama, obviously.
It's definitely a drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. A comedy is a little bit of a stretch, but there are scenes I laugh at though.
Yeah, there's funny moments for sure, especially in the first two seasons with Fack and Richie, fighting back and forth. That was definitely funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's some strategy involved. They do stand a better chance of winning a bunch of Emmys if you're up against like the Parks and Recs of the world.
Right.
If I'm comparing, I mean, Parks and Recs is a great show, but it's not the Bear.
Sure. And they both have their cult following, but it seems like the Bear is a little more culty following than some other shows. Yeah.
For sure. So let's get into episode 3. Episode 3 is called Doors. It's directed by, I'm going to mess this name up, Duccio Fabri, I guess. And then the story is by Chris Dorr and Will Guidara. And this is kind of a speed run episode. This is 30 days of them running the Bear. So the first two were probably taking place in the same day, and then we fast forward through the first 30 days of this restaurant. And I kind of called it Groundhog Day Restaurant Edition, because if I hear the word doors one more time, it was, oh man. I mean, again, it's that anxiety, it's that stress. I felt it.
Go again.
Yeah, my blood pressure was going up, my heart rate was increasing. But I also I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I love Marvel, DC. I love science fiction and things like that. This also reminded me of a sci-fi trope of the time loop episode. Do you watch a lot of sci-fi?
No, I don't.
So the time loop episode, every good sci-fi series, whether it's Star Trek, all those great science fiction TV series, Stargate, SG-1, those. There's always going to be at least one time loop episode. And what a time loop episode is they repeat the same day over and over again through some means of timey-wimey stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the time loop episode is where it focuses on maybe 1, 2, 3 characters. And you in that course of that episode, you learn so much about those people because of them having to relive this time loop over and over again. And the point of the time loop episode is they have to figure out how to get out. They have to either fix something about themselves, they got to fix something outside of themselves, but they learn about themselves and each other through this time loop episode. So I kind of thought this was that. I mean, it was just the same day over and over and over and over again of going through the first month. What did you think about this episode? What were your kind of thoughts watching this and watching that speed run through the first month?
It was. How did you know that it was a month? Did they was it a shot of a calendar? I mean, I read somewhere that, yeah, this is the first 30 days. So I kind of knew that, but I don't know if I knew it just from watching the episode.
You could see on the tickets, they had dates on the tickets. So
Gotcha.
you
Okay.
could piece together, plus also the episode description said the first 30 days of the
Okay. I didn't read the episode description. Okay.
Yeah, so the one-liner episode description.
Yeah, actually, before we even get to that, the opening with Marcus doing the eulogy for his mother,
Yeah.
that I just love. Well, again, I love Marcus, but it seemed a little bit like not Marcus because he didn't have his trademark wool cap on,
Right.
But when he was talking about his mom, that was the real Marcus, and that monologue was just amazing. And and the other thing I noticed about this is that as he was speaking, and not just in this scene, but throughout, you see close-up shots of all of their faces, one at a time.
Mhm.
And it's like the whole screen is Sydney's face or Richie's face. And you're hearing Marcus talk, but you're seeing them react to what he's saying.
Mhm.
And you can just see the emotion as they listen to him. So I just love that part of it. So yeah, but then we go from the somber, quiet funeral to the frantic pace of, here we go, the next month of services. And it seems like everything's going well to start with. I
Yeah.
thought, maybe this is going to be okay. But then the stress of perfection, it just catches up with them. You see Tina has to refire I don't know how many times. And that made me think, what a contrast. Remember first season when Sid first came in and the conflict that she had with Tina? And now Tina is looking to her. They're good friends, but she's looking to her for guidance, for help. How do I do this? And Sid has I don't know if you noticed or not, but she said it was right the first time. Did you see her say that?
Yeah.
So she's really got her back. But they run out of teaspoons. Cicero's fuming about $11,000 for butter.
Oh, that line too about butter is like Orwellian butter. What is this? Is it doomsday butter? What are we talking about here?
No, it's from New England. And then the stress of Ibra running the sandwich window. I mean, is he the only one doing that? He seems completely overwhelmed. How can one person do that window all by themselves? They've got to, I don't know. So, and then we see the Richie made his own list of non-negotiables. That was
we'll definitely want to talk about
that went over well, right?
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The service started out nice and calm and the music matches, and then it steadily starts getting worse, and the classical music picks up. It gets a little bit more stressful, and each day it gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And part of that is Carmi's non-negotiables. They're 30 days, they're changing the menu every day, and you start seeing that not working. You see Richie forgetting, what's on the menu as he's trying to describe it to the staff. And this is where you see Tina kind of messing up the cook because she's having to learn how to cook 30 different meals every day instead of sticking to a set menu. And you're starting to see these non-negotiables kind of not working for Carmi. But yeah, so Richie gets fed up and comes up with his own non-negotiable. So his are funny. A courtesy window for any menu changes. 8 hours is okay. 10 hours is ideal. Trim nails. A willingness to accommodate dietary restrictions, and then joy. Open heart, open mind, basic manners and decency, and my personal favorite, an environment that embraces and encourages razzle dazzle and the dream weave. So what I love about Richie's character, though, is that he always throws out these like pop culture psychology terms. It's like, don't talk to me until you're fully integrated. Like, what are you even talking about? Richie's hilarious. So let's compare, the non-negotiables that Richie has versus what Carmi has. And Carmi's like, no, we already have a list.
Right. We already have a list. I almost think he came up with that list just because Carmi came up with his list to start with,
Yeah.
And Richie's is a little more reasonable. Probably there's not 27 things on it like there is on Carmi's, but yeah. And one of my favorite scenes in here is when Fact does the table delivery. Carmi gives him the exact instructions. You go out, pour this in front of them, and then and he literally follows directions, but didn't work out too well because he brought it right back to the kitchen. So yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, the mirepoix faux pas is what I call it.
Yeah, that's good. They should have called it that. But in all this stress, though, what I love is that Sydney is the voice of reason.
Yeah.
She calms Carmy. She mediates between Carm and Richie. She helps Tina, when she needs help. But how long can she handle it, though?
Right.
You can see the stress on her face.
Yeah, that last part, last scene there where Carmy is starting to lose it, and you can see he's shaking, right? He's like, hands, hands, and he's like shaking, and she comes up right into his ear and says, I need you to calm down. Calm down. And it does. She does calm him down. And imagine if Sid wasn't there, like what would have happened? He would have lost it in the kitchen. And so that one scene really shows what they mean to each other. They need each other as much as two chefs need that type of balance, right? Carm is going to fly off the handle. Sid's going to be there to try to calm him down. But you're right. I mean, she can't play the mediator forever. And, it got so bad between Richie and Carm that Richie spit at him. And I'm like, whoa, I mean, this is getting rough, right? And then
that's crossing the line. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's crossing a huge line, and it just remarkable the way Sid is able to just calm him down, and we're going to see. I mean, we don't know. There have been interviews about where Sid and Carmy's relationship going to be in the future, and they were real quick to say this is not a romantic connection. They're not going to connect romantically, which I'm very happy for.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want that, right? Between Carmy and Sid, we need to see them as partners. We need to see them pushing each other to be better, and running the Bear and earning that star together as a team. I don't want them to be connected romantically.
Right. That would add a whole new layer of complexity that we don't need. Yeah.
That we don't need in a show that's all about complexity already. That's another level we definitely do not want. So one other scene I liked about this episode was where Fack is walking through with the the stuff thing where they beat it and the candy comes out. I'm losing my mind. What do they call that? Pinata. So pinata, he's walking through the kitchen with the pinata, and Carmen's like, "What is this? No, what is this?" and they start saying happy birthday in Spanish. And he picked that up from his time at Ever, right? Richie learned about those surprises at Ever, where they ran out and got the deep dish pizza for somebody that's about to leave Chicago that's never had deep dish pizza. And when I talked to Chef Curtis Duffy, who actually runs Ever in Chicago, that's not out of the ordinary. I said, is that pizza scene something that you would actually do? He's like, yeah, we have done that before. So that is not something, crazy. So it's really interesting.
Why would Carmy be so against it then? He knows this is what top restaurants do.
Right.
But it's like, he doesn't want that.
No surprises. This is non-negotiable. Yeah. No surprises.
No surprises.
Because and I think part of that is Carmy's trying to control something because he has so little control of everything else in his life, right? He has no control with Claire. He doesn't have any control with his family, especially with his mom, played brilliantly by Jamie Lee Curtis in the Fishes episode, and Richie and everything. So the one place he has control is in the kitchen, and that is his realm. And so no surprises to him is because if you're running through here with surprises, I'm not controlling it.
Right.
And that's what
I think
that's what we're
his
seeing.
control there, I think it's a delusion because they still did that. They rolled it out and Richie won. He won that time. Yeah. So he might have some control, but Richie was insisting on it then.
Yeah.
And it was the right thing to do, I mean, that's what you do to stand out.
So Richie's doing this for the customer. And I think Carmy forgets that as a restaurant, you are about serving the customer. And one scene that I thought was really interesting was when Sugar was breaking down the finances to Richie. And he's like, hey, we need to add another turn at like 9:30 at night. And otherwise we're not going to make it. And you kind of see this dichotomy in running a restaurant of the creative vision of a chef cooking food versus it's a business, and you got to you can't be creative without money. So I thought it was really cool to see the bookkeeping side of things and then not explaining any of it, right? One thing I love about the Bears, they don't explain anything. There's no exposition dumps, right? That you might see. Like some of us don't know what a turn is, but as you're watching the episode, you learn what that is.
Hmm.
But they don't say, Richard didn't say, well, what's a turn? Because obviously he wouldn't ask
Right.
that. He knows what that is, having stodged at Ever.
Yeah.
So I love seeing that kind of behind the scenes look into running that restaurant of creatives versus a business. What did you think about
Mhm.
that?
I like what you're just talking about they don't explain everything, because it's such a common thing in so many shows. And you even hear the same line again. One character will say to the other, "Tell me again why we're doing this." And
Yeah,
then the
yeah.
other person explains it, and it's like, okay, we think the viewers are not that smart, so we have to explain it to them. But yeah, they love that, or I love that. And I learned, not being in the restaurant business, or that in the first season, especially when you were talking with the chef on this show, what staging is. I didn't know
Hmm.
what that was,
Hmm.
and now I know. And I really do. I like that part of it. Um, there was a scene at the end of this episode where Richie's out front and he slowly turns and notices a fork, a single fork on the floor.
Yep.
And obviously, forks is a theme throughout this whole show. But I've heard that there's a rumor that when a Michelin chef, or a Michelin judge rather, is visiting a restaurant, they will drop something on the floor just to see how attentive the staff is, like if it gets picked up or if people just ignore it. And that's one of the factors that they judge on. Do you know if that's true or not?
There is a movie called Burnt, starring Bradley Cooper in 2015, and there's a
Mhm.
scene in there where they talk about how when the Michelin people are there, and that is one of the things that they say is they'll put a fork on the floor to see if you notice that it's there. So
Mhm.
that back in that day, 2015, 2012, I read an interview with an actual Michelin director that said that part is true. I don't know how true that is now, 10 years
Mhm.
later. But back then that was a thing where they would put a fork on the floor. And I thought
Mhm.
that too. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, are we going to see a Michelin judge this early in the season? But
Yeah.
then I thought, but then they panned over to the purse that was kind of on its side.
Mhm.
And personally, I think it's Richie thinking to himself, "What am I doing all this for?" Like, if the kitchen is so dysfunctional and Carmi is going to be this way and try to control everything in here, why am I working so hard? And so I kind of, it could have
Mhm.
been the Michelin thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll find out as we go along. But part of me was thinking this could be Richie kind of second guessing his purpose, so to speak, because he looks at the fork and then he looks at the purse and then it just cuts to black. So we don't know what he ended up doing with that. So yeah,
Right.
it's a good observation. I mean, we'll see which one it is.
It's funny that the scene used a fork. It wasn't a spoon or a knife. It had to be a fork.
Had to
It's
be a
like
fork.
keeping consistent. But yeah, I still don't get the symbolism of the purse. Like, did
Yeah.
somebody leave a purse behind? Um, are they in the bathroom? Or why is it sitting there? And it's like you said earlier, they don't do anything accidentally. There was a
Yeah.
reason for that, and maybe it'll be revealed later on what that
Yeah.
meant.
Yeah. So we got through all three episodes. What are some standout things through these first three episodes that you saw or that you're looking forward to, or are there any questions? Did you see growth through these characters or anything?
Growth, but like in Carm, maybe not the right kind of growth. He's progressing, but is he going in the right direction? That's what I
Right.
think about. And maybe this will be answered. Obviously, it's going to be answered in future episodes. But right now, to me, it just seems like there's no real solution in sight. Adding an extra turn, that doesn't get rid of all the anxiety, and I mean, maybe that will resolve some of the financial issues, but um, it almost seems kind of hopeless right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
so we'll kind of see what happens. And one thing that I realized watching these first three episodes, especially in the first episode, as we see him creating these new plates, they all these new plates had connections to his past. So he's literally cooking his trauma. and he's cooking through it, and he's trying to again control what he can control, and each dish had a callback to where he staged or where he worked in the past, whether it was at Noma or Ever or French Laundry. They had all that, some kind of connection. So
That's a great observation. I didn't notice that. That's good.
yeah, like you could see him drawing. He was sketching out a dish when he was working at Ever, and then you see that dish, that they're currently serving now. So it's
Oh, is
it's
that
gonna
the
be
dish where you send a text message to and Mikey and Tina are looking at it like, hey, what is this?
no, it wasn't
I
that
remember that
dish.
scene.
It was the dish
Okay.
that kind of looked flowery. It was pink, and it was
Okay.
a real flowery looking dish. I don't know what it was called, but that was the one that he was sketching out when Olivia Colman's like, "Hey, have you ever been to Copenhagen?" So it'll be interesting to see how he works through this, because I feel like Carmy took a step back. He was starting to become a whole person with Claire. He was starting to become something other than the chef. And then he dropped the ball with Claire, and so what he's got left, just him and his cooking. So he's working through that, and then, but who all is he gonna drag down as he tries to come back up again?
Yeah.
So we'll be interested to see. So if you're listening to this and you're probably watched all 10 episodes already, and don't leave spoilers in the reviews for us, because remember, we haven't even watched episode 4 yet, but I plan to turn that on as soon as we stop recording.
Me too.
Because
That's
we
my
got
plan.
watching episodes 4 through 6 for our next podcast. Scott, it was great having you on, and I thought this was the first recap was great, and looking forward to doing it with you every week for the next couple of weeks there. Where can people find you online? Where can people find your podcast and social media? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah. The podcast is called What Was That Like? And it's on all the podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any wherever you look or listen to podcasts, it's there. Or you can get all the information at whatwasthatlike.com. And I mentioned at the beginning, I talk to people who've been through something extremely unusual. So and I'm always looking for guests. So if I'm looking for somebody that has survived falling off a cruise ship while it was underway, or if you were in a car when it got hit by a train, all these crazy stuff like that. If anything like that has happened to you, get in touch with me. Whatwasthatlike.com.
Wow. Who would be your ideal guest from the cast of The Bear? Who would you want to talk to that went through an
man.
unusual, or not unusual trauma, but have gone through enough trauma to make a good podcast episode for What Was That Like? Who would you want on?
It's all of my episodes are based on a particular event. So I would have to say, and all of my episodes are titled the same way, like Diana survived a plane crash, or Debbie lost her leg to a shark. They all use the guest name and what happened to them for the most part. So I would probably want to talk to Donna, and
Ooh.
her episode would be called "I Drove a Car into My Front Door." And
Oh man, that's good. I would listen to that in a heartbeat.
oh man. And I have watched the Fishes episode multiple times just to marvel at the performance of Jamie Lee Curtis. She
She's
is
great.
just incredible. I love in any type of work. I love seeing people who are just masters at their craft.
Yeah.
And what a demonstration that was of acting. I just love her.
Yeah, just give her an Emmy. Now, all the Emmys that they won recently, that was all for season 1. So they haven't even talked about nominations for season 2 yet. So if Jamie Lee isn't at least nominated, I'd be really, really surprised for outstanding guest actor in a comedy series in a very not comedy episode.
And I read that there will be a season 4.
Yeah, they have filmed a lot of this concurrently with season 3. Because think about it, you got the big 3 names: Jeremy Allen White, Eben Moss Bacharach, and Ayo Edebiri. They're in high demand now. I mean, Eben's going to be the thing in Fantastic Four, and so they're going to be in high demand. So if they didn't crank out season 4 as they were filming season 3, they probably would have never gotten these people back together again. So I don't think this will go past to season 4, just because of their notoriety just skyrocketing now. And
made
all
their
these
career.
stars, yeah, all of these have made huge careers out of everybody that's been on there. So, I'm looking forward to season 4. I don't know if there's going to be season 5. I doubt it. But
I'm kind of okay with that because,
yeah, me too.
it's go out while you're on the top, go out as number one. And
Exactly.
yeah, I'm
Exactly.
okay with that.
Well, Scott, thank you so much, and I look forward to doing this again with you next week as we talk about episodes 4 through 6. And folks, don't forget to follow me on socials at Rich Herrera at Eat Your Content, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and also like and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube. So, thank you again, and we'll see you next week.